Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to talk about fitting the fuel pump regulator, and some of the braided hoses and a little bit of the componentry in the engine bay. Still got the body off the chassis, so it makes all of this really easy to get to, so it's best time to do it now, otherwise it's really difficult to fit all these bits and pieces when the body's back and bolted in place. I'm Roy Farr, and this is my build of a Gardner Douglas 427 Mark IV. So let's use the magic of reflection to talk about the next bit. This is the L-shaped bracket that sits on the back of the diff, hanging in the back of the chassis here, that supports the fuel pump and the fuel filter. It's just another gorgeous piece of stainless steel, and it's almost a shame that it's going to sit here tucked away on the chassis underneath the body where nobody will ever see it. But let's use the reflection to shoot this part of the video. So this just bolts in here at the top. A couple of bolts that are actually in supporting the diff there through this this metal bracket on the chassis, but you unbolt those and then pop this L-shaped bracket on there, and that's used basically then to mount two things. One is the fuel filter, which will sit in here somewhere, and the other one is this fuel pump, which is going to sit, I can't remember which way around, top or bottom, but we'll sort that out in a minute. So they're going to sit on there. On my chassis, where this L-shaped bracket comes in underneath, there are two holes in the bottom of the bracket here, but there are no holes in the chassis. So I'm going to have to drill a couple of holes there, and a bit like this, pop a couple of riv nuts through, just so this bottom plate has got something to screw into, otherwise that will be flapping around. So that needs to be fixed in there. I've just taped it up at the moment so it's flush, so I can just drill the holes. But then from there, the other thing that hangs off of here is a bracket that holds the two downpipe exhausts, the straight pipes that will come out the back here. So the way that looks is basically like this. Let's show this that way around to start off with. So you've got the bracket actually this way up, so the top edge, the L shape faces upwards. You might first look at it and think it should be the other way around, but it sits there and it drops and hangs the exhausts below the chassis. But you might look at this and think, well, that just fits in there. Well, that would be wrong. So we have this rubber sort of isolation vibration plate, a very, very thick piece of rubber. And in essence, what we do with that, we're going to drill a few holes in that, fit that into those three holes there. And then this guy is going to hang suspended from that, so that when the exhausts vibrate, you don't get any vibration on the chassis itself. And they've got a bit of flexibility there. So let's get cracking with that bit. All right, so I've just worked my way up through three different drill sizes there, from about a 3mm through a 5mm, and then up to about a 6mm, I think it was there, and that should be enough to get the riv nut through. Okay, so again, we've got an M4 riv nut, which is going to fit vertically up into this, and we're going to use our riv nut tool just to twist that up and pull the back of that collar tight inside the hole that we've just drilled. So let's just pop this in. So riv nut installed on the end of the gun there. I'll just pop this back in, hold it tight, and then start to do up the handle. There we go. That's bitten nicely. Nice. Perfect. Now we can get this plate back on again. There we go. A couple of those M4 bolts in there. No rattles, nice and solid. So this is the fuel pump. It's got some markings on the front there. I think you can just about make out the flow arrow from the right to the left there. It looks like we've got a part number on there, GSL 392, 20 amp fuse required. Okay, cool. So with that, if I just pop this down for a second, we've got this foam collar that goes over the top of that, just to keep that insulated and tidy, kind of like that. So then this guy basically sits in here like this way around, but it needs a couple of attachments on it first, so let's sort those out. So I've laid these two in the back of the chassis here now, just to show how they're oriented. The fuel pump sits at the bottom here, and the fuel filter sits on top and will eventually be secured into the L-shaped bracket there at the back. Now we've got a nice little diagram with the fuel filter, which is helpful, but just before we get to that, there's a feed here that comes from the tank, from the petrol tank in the boot. That's where the fuel comes into the pump, and then it's pumped and fed out here at pressure out of this outlet. And then if we look back at this diagram, then the shorter connection is the feed from the pump. So this will then connect around into the shorter connection there. And then we've got two outlets. The one on the same side is then the return to the tank. So we'll actually have a braided hose coming out of here and then following this one back to the tank, two going this way. And then as it shows on here, the other one is the feed to the engine. So this one will then go off and run down to the engine at the front of the car. So here we have the fuel pump and the fuel pressure regulator connected up with the banjo, all tightened up nice around there. I've just laid it on this stainless steel bracket after holding the stainless steel bracket up against the back of the car there and just basically setting the distance so the fuel pump and the braided hose that comes out just clears the top of this chassis rail there. If you actually drop the fuel pump all the way to the bottom of this bracket, then you end up with that braided hose sitting right parallel with the fuel rail, and then you end up having to kink the hose as it comes out of this. So you want to raise that up a little bit, just as I've got here. If I lift all of this out of the way for a second, I've just marked a tiny dot at the top there where I'll drill the hole for the mounting point for the pressure regulator. And then we've got these two plastic brackets here, which are going to have a couple of cable ties, big cable ties over here, wrapped through there. So these will be fixed to the back and bolted in, and then the cable ties will hold that fuel pump in place. And then the idea with this is the couple of holes top and bottom there, once it's fitted back in here, once the body's back on, you can actually take the whole thing out and drop it under the car by undoing the bolts at the bottom. And there's actually a couple here that you can get to upwards from under the car, and then this plate drops off and slides down. Obviously the exhausts need to move out of the way, but move those to the side, you can drop that down and then replace the fuel pump or fuel pressure regulator much more easily. Here we go, 3 holes drilled. Right, so carrying on with this stainless steel L-shaped plate for the fuel pump at the bottom and the regulator at the top. Got these black plastic angled brackets that are going to support the fuel pump, and then I've drilled a couple of holes at the top there, one to hold the regulator, and then the received wisdom from the group is that these things can be quite noisy, so underneath those black plastic grips I've actually put a couple of bits of neoprene just stuck to the face of that L-shaped bracket, another piece just a little bit above for the regulator to rest upon, and we'll see how that goes. So that's going to, let's see if I can show you this, that's going to sit there like that. These guys are just going to sit on the top, kind of like that, and then we should be able to screw that through in the top there. Move that over a touch. There we go. So we've got one hole on the right there for the bolt for this to go through, and we've got another one that we'll use for the wiring, just to pop a ground on there. Cool. There we go. So there's the fuel pump and the regulator fitted. We've got a couple of earth points up here, and the cable's nicely clamped through, running over to this side, and we've got the white positive wire just coiled up there, and of course the other two hoses just sitting there ready to connect into the body when the body drops down on the top here. So fingers crossed that's all good. So we got another little guy here, a little connector from Russell Advanced Fluid Transfer Systems. Thanks, Russell. This is a little 3/8 to 6AN connector that we need to use to connect the braided hose that's sitting just behind me here. This little guy, where we've got a rigid fuel line that runs to the back of the car there from the fuel pump. This is where we get the fuel into the engine, and we've got this braided connector that's just going to pop on there. But we need that connector to go on there, so let's just sort that. So this little guy comes apart into two pieces, and you slide the back piece just over the back of the collar there. So you've got this little ridge butting up against it, and this piece goes on the front. And there we go, all fitted, all tightened up, sorted. So that's the end of another video. Got that fuel pump, regulator, not a filter, all installed in the back of the car, and getting closer to getting the body dropped back onto the chassis. Next time we're going to take another look at the rest of the exhaust, all the way from the downpipe, dropping off the manifolds or the headers there, through the cats, and then all the way to the back of the car. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching.